In Latin, you'll often see a verb listed like this: laudo, laudāre. The first form is the first person singular, the I form, of the present tense. So laudo here is I praise. The second form is actually the most important form of the verb, in my opinion. This one, laudāre, is the infinitive, the present active infinitive to be exact. I'm going to spend my time in this video talking about the basics of the Latin infinitive. First, what is an infinitive? Okay, let's take apart the term itself. An infinitive is infinite, as the name suggests, meaning that it doesn't have boundaries. In language with verbs, these boundaries tend to be a subject, and an infinitive isn't going to change its endings because of any subject. You can think of an infinitive as the bare verb, the verb in its purest form. So, like I said in the intro, we are going to translate infinitives with the word to, followed by the rest of the meaning. So laudāre is to praise, the infinitive docēre is to teach, dūcere is to lead, and audire is to hear. There's no subject, really it's just the pure action being represented. You'll find the infinitive in always the same place whenever you look up a verb's meaning. It sits in the second position of a verb's dictionary entry, so you'll never have to guess what the infinitive is. While this form is always the present tense I form, the second one, also known as the second principal part, is your infinitive, the present active one, where the third and sometimes fourth forms are for the perfect tense, but we're not going to worry about that just now. And as you can see with the infinitive laudāre, or other infinitives like docēre, dūcere, or audire, the Latin infinitive, in its present active form, will very often end in a re, although some irregular verbs like necesse and words related to it, or volo, and its related words and their infinitives in a double S or a double L. These are rare exceptions, and even with irregular verbs, you can still find the infinitive by looking at the second principal part. You can learn more about principal parts of verbs in one of my first videos. Okay, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but this is one of my biggest pet peeves as a Latin teacher. It's really tempting, and I know so because I see it every single year, or hear it actually, to look at an infinitive like laudāre and pronounce it like an English word where the last E is silent. Laudāre, docēre, dūcere, audire. But especially with infinitives, you have to remember that there are no silent letters in Latin. The spelling of Latin words was on how each word sounded. So if a vowel is there, you should pronounce it. This final E in infinitives is pronounced E. Laudāre, docēre, dūcere, audire. Okay, end rant. But back to regular verbs. Notice how the vowel before this re sometimes changes. So it's a long A in laudāre, a long E in docēre, but a short E in dūcere, and a long I in audire. This vowel tells us what group, what conjugation, to use the technical term, a verb belongs to. Let me put it a different way. Verbs whose infinitives end the same way are all conjugated in the same way. So the first conjugation is for those whose infinitive ends are, a long A, the second in ere, a long E, the third in ere, a short E, and the fourth in ire, a long I. It can be easy to remember this because this is really alphabetical order, and you just have to remember that E long comes before E short. One more point about the wealth of grammar embedded in this present infinitive. We find the present stem, so the thing we put our endings onto for the present, imperfect, and future tenses, from the infinitive without the re. So for the verb laudo, laudāre, the present stem is laudāre without the last two letters, lauda. When we form the present tense, other than laudo, we have the present stem with the endings. In the imperfect tense, we have the present stem plus our ba, and then our endings. The feature is likewise, although just a little bit more complicated. The present stem for other conjugations of verbs, like for docēo, is still the infinitive docēre without the re, so docē. And with this, you can see how the vowel before the re is important in our present tense. In Latin, the infinitive is most often treated like a noun, and that's a little confusing, so let me elaborate. In the sentence necesse est mihi docēre, it is necessary for me to teach, the infinitive docēre is actually functioning as the subject of the verb est. Yes, it's necessary for me to teach, but it's more correct to say, to teach is necessary for me, or better, teaching is necessary for me. This is called the subjective infinitive, and because the infinitive is the subject of est, it's really a noun. In the sentence eubeo te docēre, I order you to teach. Docēre is kind of acting as an object of eubeo, since it answers the question, what do I order you to do? To teach. And that's how we find direct objects. So docēre must be a direct object, which makes it kind of a verbal noun. It acts as a noun, but at its core is an action. And this is called the objective infinitive. And because the infinitive is the object of eubeo, it's kind of a noun. And sometimes the infinitive fills out or completes the meaning of the verb. So with possum docēre, I am able to teach, or maybe even more simply, I can teach, the infinitive completes the thought. You can't just say, I am able. Possum demands an infinitive. And the same is true for volo docēre, I want to teach. The volo needs the docēre to complete its meaning. And this use is called the complementary infinitive. The infinitive is exceptionally important in Latin, and not just with its meaning of to. It tells us how to group our verbs into conjugations. By grouping our verbs, we are able to have regular patterns for making all the different forms of the verb. And not only this, but the infinitive, without its re ending, gives us the stem from which we make many of our finite conjugated forms.